and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Monique, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 2 player game Wingspan Asia, which can also be expanded to include more players. This release is designed by Elizabeth Hargrave and published by Stonemaier Games, who helped sponsor this video. In this expansion for the original Wingspan, we're increasing our flock to include 90 new birds from Asia, new bonus goals, and new modes of play, including a standalone game for 1 to 2 players that requires nothing else to play except what you find right in here. However, you can also combine these contents with the original Wingspan and its expansions to increase your variety of birds and goals. Or play the new flock mode that's included, allowing 6 to 7 players to enjoy a game of Wingspan all at once. If you've never played Wingspan, you should start by watching our full tutorial for that game, which is linked in the description below. But otherwise, join me at the table and let's learn how you can mix in this expansion into your Wingspan experience. To start, I should mention that the rulebook from this expansion contains all the rules for the standard game of Wingspan, along with the rules introduced by this expansion's new modes of play. So feel comfortable replacing your original rulebook with this one. Speaking of which, if you just want to add the contents of this expansion to your base game or other expansions you own, it's very easy. First, simply combine the new Asian bird cards with the bird deck you already have. If you want to separate them out later, any from this expansion have a letter A marked in their corner, like you see here. This is also a good time to show you a few of the beautiful birds you'll find in this set. So before we move on, I'll just display some of these, a few at a time, if you want to pause and read any of their effects to get a sense of what they'll add to your game. You can also check out the included appendix describing all the new birds and their effects if you have any questions about them while playing. This expansion also comes with new bonus cards you can mix into any others you already have. But first, go through the original bonus cards from the core set and find the photographer, cartographer, and anatomist. 3 new versions of these come in this Asia expansion that have more detailed descriptions, and they should replace the previous ones, which you will no longer need. If you're mixing this new set with the original, you may want to find this Historian bonus card from the core set and remove it, as its scoring objective won't be as relevant with the new birds. You'll also find new eggs to mix in with your others. So that's how you mix the Asia expansion with the rest of Wingspan, including the other expansions. But this box can also be played entirely on its own in a 2-player mode known as Duet, which follows all of the rules of the regular game, with a few exceptions, starting with the setup. So let me take you through what's different there. You set up the game in mostly the same way, but this version replaces the bird feeder with this board. When the included dice are on the board, they are in the feeder, and when they are used, you set them beside it. Instead of a tray for the bird cards, you have a board to display the 3 face-up birds, setting the deck nearby. The expansion also comes with the required food tokens. There's a player board for each person included, with a regular side and a side for use with the Oceania expansion, and this tile will indicate the first player. Between the players, you'll set this Duet map in place of the bonus board from the core games, and will also need to use these specially designed double-sided gold tokens, which you can identify by their red corners. Randomly set 4 gold tiles into these 4 spaces of the Duet board, also randomizing which sides are face up, returning the extras to the box. This expansion comes with 8 action cubes for each player, and a set of these Duet tokens in their color that they should also collect. They then place 1 Duet token onto each bird space of their player mat, so that it looks like this when they're done. Otherwise, the rest of the game is laid out as normal for a regular game of Wingspan. And that's the setup! In the Duet mode, you'll play using the same rules of Wingspan as explained in our prior tutorial video for the core game, but there are some important changes to go over. From now on, anytime you play a bird onto your mat by using the Play a Bird action, or resolving a power that lets you play a bird, you'll add one of these Duet tokens onto a space of the Duet map. For example, if I played a bird here, I would then add this token. The map is divided into 3 regions that match the ones you'll find on your player mat: forest, wetland, and grassland. When adding your token to the Duet map, it must go into an empty space matching the same region of the bird you just played. For example, we played this bird to the forest, so our token would go into one of these spaces. Additionally, the space we pick must show a characteristic of the bird we played. For example, to place our token onto this space, the bird we just played must use a bowl nest. The bird we played instead uses a cavity nest. So we can't put our token here, but this would work. This space would also not be valid since it requires a beak pointing left, which we don't have in its picture. And this wouldn't work either since its wingspan is greater than 50 centimeters. If the space shows another symbol on the left, you'd gain that as a reward. So here, we'd gain a food token. To put your token on a space showing a food symbol, you need to have spent one of the food types matching a symbol that appears on the bird's cost. So to put my token here, we'd need to see a seed symbol in the cost. And I would need to have paid a seed cost with a die or token. If I instead use two of a matching food type as a wild to act as a seed symbol, that's not enough. I need to have spent a seed symbol directly. Also remember, only one token can be on each space of the Duet map. Even though the tokens will wrap together, once one player has claimed a space, the other player cannot go there too. If you played a bird and there's no available matching space to place a token, or you just don't want to put the token in the other spaces, you may instead add your token to this box. Any number of tokens can end up here, and once a token is in this area, it means that on a later turn, you may choose to remove one of your tokens from here to resolve either of these pictured effects. And you can continue removing tokens on the same turn if you want, in order to repeat that effect or resolve the other one. And you can do this as many times as you have tokens in this space. This one lets you reset the bird tray cards, while this one lets you reset the bird feeder. It's also important to remember that you get to add one of your Duet tokens to the Duet map anytime you play a bird. For example, some of the expansions allow you to play a bird on top of another bird. This is still playing a bird, so you get to add a Duet token. Just take it from one of these other spaces. On the other hand, if an effect lets you move a bird to a new space, this is not the same as playing a bird, so you don't get to add a token to the Duet map. Instead, just relocate the Duet token in the space you move to somewhere else. Which brings us to an important point. The Duet tokens you put on your board during setup are just there to help you remember that after a bird is played, you then add a token to the Duet map. You could just as easily keep them in a supply beside your board instead and take them from here. But when you're first learning, having them on the board can be a helpful way to remember to place them. Also, if you ever play more than 15 birds in a game and run out of tokens, just use a suitable replacement. And those are the rules for managing the Duet map during the round. At the end of the round, we have a few new steps as well. Here, you'll resolve the end of round goal as normal, but these will relate to the Duet tokens you placed. For example, in this case, the player who added the most Duet tokens to the grassland wins that goal, and places one of their action cubes here, earning these amount of points shown here at the end of the game. Their opponent then adds one of their action cubes to this space, scoring no points. But scoring 0 points on the goal means you take the first player token to have for the start of the next round. In the event of a tie for the goal, both players get these points fully, and the first player token goes to the player who didn't have it in the round that was just played. Now at the very end of the game, each player will find their largest group of Duet tokens connected by these dashed lines on the map, scoring 1 point for each token in it. So for example, the player with the black token scores this group as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. The rest of the endgame scoring works the same as a regular game, so follow those steps as usual. You'll also find some helpful tips here in the rulebook about playing the Duet mode with the Europe and Oceania expansion, so be sure to refer to those details when playing. Otherwise, those are the rules for the Duet mode of the game. Now let's learn about Flock mode, which lets you play Wingspan with 6 or 7 players all at once. To begin, split the players into 2 groups of 3 in a 6-player game, and a group of 3 and 4 if you have 7 players. Even though you'll have 2 groups, everyone is still playing in the same game together, as we'll see. Otherwise, you'll set up the game as normal with a few changes. First, put this turn order dial in the middle of the play area flipped to the side showing your number of players, along with a matching numbered pointer. We'll assume we have a 6-player game. Now make sure that players are seated with matching colored action cubes in the same order as the colors showing around the outside edge of the dial here. For example, the player with the yellow cubes would sit on this side of the player with the white cubes. The green player would be next to them, and so on. Now of course, each player would have their own mat as usual, but to save space, we'll just represent the players with their action cubes. Remember, we split our players into 2 groups, so we'll put red, blue, and purple in one, and green, white, and yellow in the other. To have enough bird cards for this many players, you'll need to combine the ones in the base game with at least one other expansion. And with the decks combined, split them in half, setting each next to a bird tray for each group, with both having 3 cards flipped up as a face-up display. Each group should also have their own bird feeder, populated with 5 dice. If you're playing with the Oceania expansion, each group's 5 dice should be made up of 2 nectar dice and 3 regular ones. The food tokens and eggs you can put in a shared supply for both groups, along with all your bonus cards shuffled into a single shared deck. As explained on the back of the rulebook, you should remove the Historian bonus, as it won't work well with the Asian birds. Now put out this new flock mode goal board, which will be shared by all players, setting 4 random standard goal tiles on it as usual. The players will set up the rest of their personal areas as usual, and then you turn this dial so that the star points to the person with the first player token. And that's the setup for this flock mode. But just be aware, even though we divided the players into 2 groups, they aren't on teams. We'll see why the groups matter in a moment, but just know each person is playing as an individual. That said, you only have access to the bird feeder and bird tray of the group you are in. So even if an effect allows you to take any die, you can only pick from the dice in your group. The game otherwise plays the same in flock mode as in the regular game, except for one very important difference. 2 players, 1 from each group, will always be taking their turn at the same time. That's what this dial is for. It tells you which 2 players will be active in the first turn, in this case, the red and yellow player. They'll take their turns simultaneously, not waiting for each other, just playing a turn like they normally would. However, everyone must wait until both players are finished before going on to the next turn. For this reason, it's a good idea if the players taking their turns both announce clearly when they're done. At that time, this dial is rotated 1 space clockwise, which will indicate the next 2 players to take their turns. There's a slight difference in a 7-player game, so let's see why. Remember, in a 7-player game, you'll have a group of 4 players and a group of 3. In this case, we'll say the players from yellow, purple, white, and black are in the 4-person group. Sometimes, players on the edges of the 4-person group will be the active players at the same time. Yellow and black in this case. This can cause issues if they both want to interact with their group's shared dice or bird tray at the same time, but these problems are easily solved. In these situations, those players should resolve their turns one at a time. The player with the star pointing to their color in these situations takes their turn fully first. Then the other player goes. In the first and third round, one of those players will have the star pointing at them, and because of how the first player token exchanges hands, the other player will have the star pointing at them during rounds 2 and 4, as indicated here. Trust me on this, the math works out. When 2 players from the same group are taking turns, if the first of the players to take a turn draws cards, the bird tray will refill at the end of their turn before the next person goes. Whether you're using the 6 or 7-player flock dial, you'll have pairs of players continue to take turns until all the action cubes have been played. In rounds 2 and 4 in a 7-player game, you'll end the round with 1 player who still has an action cube remaining, and in those cases, they take their last turn all on their own. Either way, once the players have placed all their action cubes, you proceed to the end of the round, which was resolved as normal, with 1 new change. You'll now use this new flock goal board, and when scoring here, ties are friendly. In other words, if 2 players tie for first, they both get the full points of first place, and the next best player goes into second place, and so on. When the round is over, the first player token is passed to the left, and you move the turn order dial so that the star points to this player, indicating the 2 starting players for the new round. The only other thing you need to be aware of in flock mode is how some of the powers work a little differently. For example, if a power lets you target a single other player, you can pick anyone at the table, even someone who isn't in your group. And if a power refers to a player on your left or right, it still resolves for both, even if one of them isn't part of your group. There are a couple of other key power interactions covered here in the rulebook that you'll want to be aware of, but I believe these will make the most sense to go over with the players when playing by referring directly to this section at that time. And that covers flock mode in Wingspan Asia, but even that's not all that comes in the box. There are also rules and components for solo play, but those I'll leave for you to discover on your own. Otherwise, that's everything you need to know to use Wingspan Asia on its own or mixed in with the rest of your Wingspan collection. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, which I'll put a link to in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, consider liking, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get a notification anytime we post a new video. And if you'd like to support us directly, you can join our Patreon team, which I'll have linked below. But until next time, thanks for watching.